Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're actually going to talk about history of the Great Depression. The war had left the countries involved pretty broke by the late 1920s. The world economy had slowed down. Wages were down. Sales were down. The markets for farm goods wasn't doing well. Causes of the Great Depression in the US. Britain and France had a huge debt to pay to the US. They wanted Germany to pay the US through the reparation. Germany owned Britain and France. However, Germany was out of cash too and could only pay reparations by borrowing more money from the US to give to Britain and France to give the US. This cycle is borrowing and lending was a problem. So while I talk, I hope you guys also understand, listening and understanding. And maybe you have some questions and stuff. Why did I even say that? World War I left the US in a much better shape than it did Europe. The government had needed more supplies and this created jobs. During the 1920s, Americans started investing in the stock market. They began making purchases on credit. However, the export market was down because Europeans didn't have money for good American goods. When Europeans had trouble paying their debt, American banks crumbled. On October 29, 1929, the American stock market crashed. The surge unemployment followed. This economic crisis was the Great Depression. So, if you're wondering what I'm looking at, I'm actually reading a book called The World History. You didn't know this book? But I'm reading it because when I learn it, I can memorize and say, so that's why. The bank run. Many Americans ran to get money out of their banks when the stock market crashed. The banks told them sorry, but they didn't have the money. President Franklin Roosevelt made laws to ensure protection of citizen money in banks after that. So, next one. Roosevelt's New Deal. Within the first 100 days of its presidency in 1933, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR, created a program called the New Deal to combat the economy downturn, including the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, VERA, helped the employed. The Agricultural Adjustment Administration Administration, AAA, raised food prices to help farmers. The Public Works and Administration, PWA, sponsored public works projects and created new jobs, building bridges, post offices, airports, and roads. In 1935, a second New Deal established a public works program known as the Works Progress Administration, WPA, which replaced FERA or FERA and created over 3 million jobs. The second New Deal also created employment, insurance, and social security. FDR also improved the banking system and expanded rights for labor unions. Impressive, but 3 years later, nearly 11 million Americans remained unemployed. Depression all around the world. To get back on its feet, Great Britain used traditionally conservative policies of balancing budgets and imposing protective tariffs. They also used economic retrenchment policies, which basically meant they cut down on unnecessary facing expensive. Other European countries were less fortunate in facing recovery. Desperate countries turned to leaders who promised to help but became despots. In Germany, Adolf Hitler came to power as leader of a National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazis. Hitler called for a crusade against communists and Jews, whom he blamed for Germany's defeat in World War II. The Germans knew that one way to get out of the debt was to attack countries they owed money to. World War II was soon to come. So that's all about the Great Depression. So I hope you were guys listening, because there's some questions about the Great Depression. So say, check your knowledge. What was the main factor contributing to the decline of the world economy? The second question is, what happened to American banks when European countries were unable to pay off their debts? What program did FDR create to combat the Great Depression? The New Deal, or the Open Door policy, or the Works Progress Administration, or the League of Nations? Or explain the details of this program. How did Great Britain attempt to combat the Great Depression? How did major historical figure came to power in Germany during this time of economic crisis? What groups of people did figure blame for Germany's many social and economic problems during this time? So then, the first question, I told you all the questions, but then you guys can pause the video and think about what the answers can be. Also, you can rewind because the answers are in it. So, can you pause? Okay. So these are the answers. I think you talked with your friends, right? Or by yourself, or your class, whatever. The answers, okay. First question, what was the major factor contributing to the decline of the world economy? The major factor that harmed the world economy was World War I because the countries that had been involved were broke by the time it ended. Overall, wages went down, sales went down, and the agricultural market went down. Second question, which you probably should have talked. If you don't, just pause it. Just pause and think about the questions. Unless you can just pause it right now. Well, anyways, what happened to American banks when European countries were unable to pay off their debts? The answer is when Europeans had trouble paying their debt, American banks fell apart and stock market crashed on October 29, 1929. Number 3. What program did FDR create to combat the Great Depression? A. The New Deal. B. The Open Door Policy. C. The Works Programs Administration. D. The League of Nations. The answer was A. The New Deal. Explain the details of this program. Just pause it because I'm about to say it. The New Deal set up agencies to help people through the financial crisis, such as the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, FERA, to help the employment, the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, AAA, to raise food prices to help farmers, and the Public Works Administration, PWA, to sponsor public works projects and create new jobs. The fifth question. How did Great Britain attempt to combat the Great Depression? Great Britain tried to combat the Great Depression by using economic retrenchment policies which cut down unnecessary spending and expense. They also balanced budgets and imposed protective tariffs. Question number 6. What major historical figure came to power in Germany during this time of economic crisis? Alright, how come I forgot? I almost forgot to tell you that you should pause. So if you know it, just pause now. How could I completely forgot? Well, anyways. Okay. I'm gonna wait, did I say it? I think so. Adolf Hitler came to power as the leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis. Last question, number 7. What groups of people did this figure blame for Germany's many social and economic problems during this time? Pause and then, okay. The answer is Hitler blamed Jews and communists for Germany's problem. So that's all about the Great Depression. I hope you learned some new facts, and bye!